And I think where I'll start actually is just, I know there's some information already out there about the science behind it, but just to start build a narrative so you guys can follow along with me is this technology has been in development about 20 years ago, back in 2000, alongside the Human Genome Project. So when we were mapping out human DNA and looking at our DNA on the inside and what are those physical features that are activated when certain DNA are present in an individual. And so our team of scientists got really interested in that and started looking at the genetic expression of the individual and how does that relate to the physical expression. So we have DNA that dictates the color of our eye, the type of hair that we have, the shade of skin that we have. And so how does that DNA also then go deeper into our biology? And actually very early on, this caught the attention of the likes of United Nations and World Health Organization. We were engaged to do some population health and consulting with them way back when. And the researchers stumbled across something that they weren't quite aware they were going to stumble across. And they started seeing these patterns, understanding our genes and our DNA, and then layering in some different layers of science. As Paul mentioned earlier, there's actually 15 different layers of science inside of Shea. And so they started with the genes and the genetics, and then they layered in embryology, for example. Now, embryology is the science of the embryo, which they talk about as being the science from the womb to the tomb. And you can actually accurately predict the growth rate of the human over their entire lifespan. So from inside the womb all the way until you pass on into the tomb. So they layered in the embryology, and then they started seeing some interesting patterns. They're like, okay, wait a second. Let's layer in endocrinology, which is all about your kidneys and your hormones and neurotransmitters. So your oxytocins and your dopamine and all that. Let's see if there's any patterns there if we start looking at our genetics and start looking at the embryo and start looking at now how we respond to different hormones. Let's layer that into the system. Wow, okay, there's another pattern again. It's starting to fit. And so they started layering these 16 different layers of science on top of each other. And lo and behold, this pattern of the human physical form spectrum emerged. And there's actually a spectrum that appeared. And many of you might be familiar with some words around the somatotypes, which is endoderm, mesoderm, and ectoderm, which is just your different layers of derm when you're in the uterus, but also then layers inside the human body as well. And in the human form, that translates into an ectomorph, a mesomorph, and an endomorph. And that just means the physical structure and type of individual. And so that's where this technology that we have is so exciting, because we've now gotten to the point where we can actually take a photo on a smartphone to do a body scan of the physical structure of the individual to accurately understand what is going on the inside of the individual by seeing who they are on the outside. So how that DNA is being expressed. We also then ask them some lifestyle questions so we better understand what their day-to-day activities are like, what their stress levels are like, etc., to actually get a very compelling understanding of who that person is on the outside and on the inside.